So this is a video that we have had requests to do for a long time now, but I've always put it off since I didn't think it was particularly original. However, the requests have become so frequent and my ego is now so inflated that I've convinced myself that even with a topic you're familiar with, some people are actually interested to hear my take and opinion on it. This was a really difficult 7 to compile, so I decided to come up with a system to make myself feel a little more confident with my eventual selections and their ordering. That system was to rank every trio out of 10 in terms of both how good the three players were, or are, individually, and how well or effectively they played together, to give an overall total out of 20. There are no bonus points for longevity, the only condition was that they must have spent at least a season playing together, and there'll be some honourable mentions featured between first and second place. Here are our 7 best attacking trios of all time. Pele, Pepe and Coutinho. When you start with a front 3 like this, that should serve as some indication of the level of competition in this 7 and in the honourable mentions. Pele, Pepe and Coutinho form the attacking trio of Santos for a decade which Santos spent most of as the best club side on the planet. Pepe was the oldest of the 3 and he operated out wide on the left. Pele was of course the most famous and talented footballer on the planet and he tended to operate in a slightly withdrawn number 10 position behind the baby of the group, Antonio Wilson Vieira Honorio, better known simply as Coutinho. In terms of the sheer numbers, Pepe scored 405 goals in 750 games for Santos, Coutinho scored 370 goals in 457 games for the club, and Pele scored 643 goals in 656 games for the Brazilian Giants. There's not much left for us to say about Pele, we have entire videos dedicated to the guy, so we'll talk a little bit about Pepe and Coutinho. Pepe was a sensational dribbler who was incredibly direct and possessed a thunderous shot. Coutinho was arguably an even better dribbler who enjoyed excellent chemistry with Pele as well as being ruthless in front of goal with either foot or his head. Together, they won 19 trophies in 10 years, including 2 Intercontinental Cups, and they have to feature in this 7. Di Stefano, Puskas and Real. It's hard to keep the Real Madrid team of the mid to late 1950s out of any football's greatest list, and this one is no exception. Alfredo Di Stefano is the greatest footballer to ever don the famous white shirt of Real Madrid, Ferenc Puskas is the 3rd greatest centre-forward of all time, and Hector Real is perhaps one of the most underrated and overlooked players in the history of the game. As with Pele, we have often talked about Di Stefano and Puskas previously, so we'll focus on Real here. Somewhat similarly to Di Stefano, Real was an Argentine whose career took him from his native Argentina to Colombia and eventually Real Madrid. Also similarly to his compatriot, Real was somewhat difficult to pin down, as a prolific offensive player whose supreme technique and engine often saw him dropping very deep. Real and Di Stefano were part of all 5 of Real's consecutive European Cup titles, but Puskas' later arrival in 1958 meant this trio only spent 3 seasons together. But they turned scoring goals into an art form during those 3 years, as well as being remarkably successful. Moreno, Pedernera and Labruna. Right, this was the entry I was most doubtful about simply because River Plate's all-conquering side of the 1940s famously deployed a front 5, not a front 3. However, since 2 of that 5 were very definite wingers and the other 3 operated largely in tandem in central attacking roles, we think they're more than eligible. Spearheading a team nicknamed La Máquina, or the Machine, these 3 spent 5 years playing together. Pedernera was the biggest star in Argentine football, a seemingly untackleable, technical and tactical genius nicknamed the Master, whose serious injury and subsequent defection to Colombia served as a dagger to the heart of Argentinian football. Moreno is considered by some to be the greatest Argentine footballer of all time, and Labruna was a brilliant and instinctive centre-forward who scored goals at will. Best, Charlton and Law. It seems ridiculous that a front 3 comprising of George Best, Bobby Charlton and Denis Law, all Ballon d'Or winners, should only come 4th, but that's where their combined total placed them. Nicknamed the United Trinity, or the Holy Trinity, and immortalised by a statue of all 3 outside Old Trafford today, these 3 played together for 10 years. Charlton was the talisman, Best the most naturally gifted, and Law the most prolific. Between 1964 and 1968, all 3 won the Ballon d'Or, as United won their first European Cup in '68. Despite his flaws, that season belonged to George Best, who scored 32 goals from the wing, whilst Charlton chipped in with 20 and Law a further 10. Puskas, Coxis and Guti. In terms of how well they played together, no trio scored as highly as these 3, who we gave a perfect 10. As for their individual talents, Puskas, the only man to feature twice in this 7, we have already stated we consider to be among the 3 finest centre-forwards of all time. Sandor Coxis was a little less gifted, but even more prolific for the national team, and quite possibly the finest attacking header of the ball in history. and Nandor Haidguti changed the way in which football was played forever. In a team built on the philosophy of every player being able to transition seamlessly from defence into attack and vice versa, Puskas and Coxes played as centre forwards, but they weren't static number 9s as was typical of their era. Haidguti was the linchpin and the reason why Hungary's magical Magyars continued to bamboozle the best national teams on the planet for more than 5 years. Stop him and you could stop this team, but few came close. A wonderfully intelligent footballer whose centre-halves had no idea whether to track in his withdrawn role, he caused havoc on a routine basis, and his pinpoint passes were a dream for two of the most deadly strikers the game has ever seen. Ronaldo, Rivaldo, and Ronaldinho. Ranking very highly for both individual talent, all Ballon d'Or winners once again, and their chemistry/effectiveness together, having won the World Cup, few of you will be surprised by the inclusion of Brazil's famed attacking trio of the early 2000s. Affectionately known as the 3Rs, they should have spent 4 years playing together in the national team, between the baby of the group Ronaldinho's debut in 1999 and Rivaldo's last cap in 2003, but in reality it was much less. Ronaldo was the pick of the bunch. The perfect blend of pace, power and skill, he came 7th in our list of the greatest footballers of all time. His peak actually came before Ronaldinho's international debut, and injuries meant he won no caps in 2000 or 2001. It is 2002 that these three are best remembered for though, when they formed an unstoppable attacking trio at the World Cup. Ronaldo and Rivaldo were both losing finalists 4 years earlier, but with the addition of Ronaldinho, they weren't to be beaten in South Korea and Japan. Ronaldo scored 8 goals in 7 games to win the Golden Boot, Rivaldo was the tournament's second top scorer with 5, and Ronaldinho chipped in with 2 goals and 2 assists. All 3 players made the team of the tournament. The honourable mentions. There were so many trios that made our original shortlist that I'd bore you to death if I were to mention them all here. Instead, we'll just pick out some of the most notable and some who scored the highest using our ranking out of 20 criteria. Possibly the most unlucky trio not to feature were Anton Schall, Matthias Schindler and Josef Bican, who formed the front 3 of Austria's Wunder team in the 1930s. Schindler is possibly the greatest pre-war footballer of them all, or at least he's our favourite. A master tactician with superb technique, he was Austria's star man. Bican was a relentless goal-getter who could outrun Olympic sprinters, and the least well-known of the trio, Schall, scored 27 goals from 28 caps for his country. Then there is Gren Lee, the colloquial term for Swedish forwards Gunnar Gren, Nils Lidholm and Gunnar Nordahl, who spent 4 years together at AC Milan. Nordahl was the pick of the bunch, just about the perfect centre-forward, but all 3 could accurately be described as world-class. Speeding things up, the most obscure trio on our shortlist may just have been the most prolific. Atletico Mineiro forwards Mario de Castro, Jairo and Said, collectively known as the Trio Maldito, whilst the Netherlands' 1974 forward line of Cruyff, Rensenbrink and Rep had to score highly. More recently, Manchester United's 2-season trio of Cristiano Ronaldo, Wayne Rooney and Carlos Tevez was packed full of talent, energy and hunger, whilst the highest scoring current 3 came courtesy of PSG and the varied talents of Edinson Cavani, Kylian Mbappe and Neymar. Those are just our most notable honourable mentions, but we'd love to hear some of your suggestions and undoubted outrage in the comments. But before we get to that, there is just the small matter of first place. Messi, Suarez and Neymar. Controversial though it may be, using our criteria of measuring both the individual talents and the cohesion plus effectiveness as a trio to give an overall score, no one scored higher than Barcelona's 3-season-long combination of Lionel Messi, Luis Suarez and Neymar. For much of this time, it could be reasonably argued that Barcelona's front 3 comprised of 3 of the 4 best players in the world, or at least 3 of the 4 best forwards. Spearheaded by the greatest footballer to have ever lived, the brilliance began in 2014 with Luis Suarez's arrival, by which time Neymar had been at the Camp Nou for a season already. In 3 seasons together, Messi, Suarez and Neymar scored a combined total of 364 goals. We gave them 9s for both individual talent and collective excellence, and a combined score of 18 makes them the greatest attacking trio in football history by our estimation. So that's it for our 7. Thanks for watching, feel free to subscribe and turn on notifications for more from us if you enjoyed the video, and you can now also follow us on Twitter for more ramblings from me. Our username is simply @HITC Sevens.